Good afternoon, my Dungeon Boss brethren. It is FADD Friday today. Back in action to start looking at some of our heroes, how they stack up, what their traits are, what their abilities are, if they're viable, etc., etc. You know the drill. Today we're going to talk about a fan favorite. We're going to talk about Balog. Balog is all over the place in PvP. He is a silver hero, which means he is eligible for silver and gold PvP. I do see him in both, but obviously he spends most of his time in Silver League PvP. He pairs, you'll see the team all the time, Emily and William, Balog, and Echo. Very, very common these days. But Balog is paired with a number of other heroes as well. You see him pretty frequently. So we know he's a good hero. Let's look into a little bit more of why that is and why he's beneficial. So there's a lot going on with Balog that make him pretty viable. He is, first and foremost, he is a barbarian, not really anything critical there, and he is a tank. On top of that, he is indeed slow, so he tends to go very late in the rotation, usually last, depending on the team that you have him. So if we look at his stats first, like I said, he is slow. But looking at the overall basic stats first, attack is at 2500. That's actually pretty darn good in terms of where that falls. That's up there. It's not caster level, but for someone who is not necessarily an attacker, that's actually pretty good. His defense is pretty stellar as well. His defense is among the highest in the game. At this point, there are a few people that are a little bit higher, but he is amongst the highest defense in the game. So he's got basic damage mitigation there. So plus he gets a bonus from being slow. So good deal there. Skill is irrelevant. Max health again, one of the highest in the game there, if not the highest. He might be the highest that I have right now. So just the health pool alone, combined with the high defense, makes him a little bit tougher to kill. And if you've ever tried to go after him with someone besides a light hero, it takes a little bit to chip away. Add in healers and other taunters, and it can be a major pain to do so. So his health to level ratio is not the highest by any means, because he is indeed maxed out at this point here. We tend to see those get a little bit of diminishing returns, but his health to his level is it's only about 113, which is mid-tier compared to a bunch of other ones that I have right now. That shouldn't really deter you a little bit though, as his raw numbers are very formidable. Um, his other traits, though, so we know he's slow, so he gets extra attack and extra defense, which is why those are so high. He is indeed armored, so he works good against lots of melee attackers, 25% damage reduction. So as long as those attacks are basic or just regular physical attacks, that's what matters, even if they're abilities. Rage increase damage the lower this health is. You have to look at the tooltips to see what this is, but basically as he dies, he gets a little stronger and stronger and stronger. So tough to really make complete use of that because you can't control how much damage an opponent is going to do to you. But you do have the ability to kind of control it if you used him in campaign. There used to be some other instances where you could, I believe you could have someone where their health couldn't drop below 1 hit point, which was a neat mechanic. I don't think we currently have anything like that where we can overtly save him from death but get him at his maximum level of rage. So it's a neat little thing, but we're talking about really only 10% per tiered level. So as you get down to one spot, you're going to get a 10% bonus in your attacks. Not huge, but as you're down to the last few slivers of life, you will boost it up by roughly 90%, if you will. Next up, he's got the Barbaric Heart, so increased max health by 5% for all barbarians. He is his own ally. You'll see that here as well. Um, there are some Balog teams that run with Ignis. I don't see Ignis too often run with Balog, but I certainly see it more than I see Abigail, for example. But running barbarians is not really a common instance. You might need that for, let's say, challenge mode dungeon, if and when those come about. But realistically, you're likely never going to pair those up except for in very rare instances. So while it's nice, 5% is also very negligible in terms of max health. We look at 5% of his health, for example. We're looking at, let's see, 10% is 1,000, 5%, 500 health. So he would still have 11,000 health. In the grand scheme of things, that's not really anything. Bone Rattler. So melee attacks have 60% chance to purge one stack of a buff from target hit. So this is what's great about using Balog as a PvP attacker, because you spend a lot of turns doing just basic attacks when you're on energy cooldown. So while it's slow and it can only remove one stack, this is really helpful for let's say like double shields. It's also good for things like criticals or other things that specifically taunt. Taunt is one of the most single most important ones that you can hit is to remove taunt from someone. It's only a 60% chance, but that 60% chance is pretty good. So that's one of the reasons that he is so strong and so widely used, because of the sheer number of basic attacks that he's doing. You have that chance to keep pounding away on other tanks and ultimately remove their taunting. His last ability then is the volume control, which is one of his absolute best. He is one of only just a handful of people that can completely mitigate silence. Other one that I can think of is Echo off the top of my hand, who's immune to everything. But this immune to silence is absolutely critical when you start talking about um, PvP, because there's so much silence going on in PvP that you need to be able to weather that storm. Um, so in this case here, um, so take a look at the other part. So immune to silence, that's great, but also apply silence back to anyone who crits on him. So it's a nice little deterrent for anybody that would be doing criticals. Again, I wouldn't hitch your wagon to that in terms of PvP success. Realistically, you want him in there just as damage reduction and taunting. But that opening silence from his first ability is also what you want as well. Beyond that, it's just a sort of a bonus, and it's a matter of keeping him alive at that point. Um, his overall abilities are a little bit underwhelming in the grand scheme of things. His first one is a very powerful ability. This ability to um, one, it silences and taunts in the same turn. The only downside about this, with Balog being um, a slow hero, he doesn't get his taunt off until the end of the first turn, and so a lot of times enemy attackers have already done a good number of damage to your team. You don't get a chance to do that taunting, nor do you get a chance to do the silencing. One of the interesting things about this particular timing is you silence everybody on turn for their turn two at the end of your turn one, and then you taunt on yourself. When realistically, I wouldn't want them silenced at all on that one, because once I taunt, most heroes their turn two ability is usually single target damage, and so I wouldn't want them silenced for that. I would want them actually doing damage to a tank for that. So these two forces are a little bit opposing. So realistically, you're going for the silence, and then the taunt is just kind of there. There's not really much you can do about that, depending on which teams you're going against. The taunt disappears. We saw that with my video yesterday. A number of times Bailout just had his taunt removed. That's pretty common. The actual damage itself, the damage is negligible. So in this case here, the amount of damage that he actually does is only equivalent to his basic attack for the most part. So you're basically hitting each person with a basic attack and then silencing them. So the silence happens regardless if they're hit from what I determined. So it says silence for 2 turns on hit. Um, but again, I'm not sure what the mechanic is for hit. So for me, hit has always been to actually hit and do damage, not just to touch them, because I had been seeing the silence go through bubble shields, and so I need to look into those mechanics a little bit further to verify. But so take that with a grain of salt. His Skullcracker is his first single target damage. So 3 melee attacks on a enemy, 970 each. So this one's a little bit misleading because his attack is bigger than this. So this is technically less than his basic attack, but it's also times 3. So realistically, this is about 2.5. So this is his prototypical 2.5x hyper attack, if you will. So Skullcracker, we see a number of other people have that as well. It's great for busting through shields. That's my number one use case for it. But it's also great to finish off somebody too if you're trying to do damage. The damage itself isn't huge, but like I said, it takes care of shields really, really nicely. Doesn't do anything else, just straight up damage. Then his last ability is the Bull Rush. This is his supercharged attack. This is his highest value for the most part. This is almost 3x of what his basic attack is. Um, so um, yeah, I mean it does stacks of prone. Prone's fine. It's nothing groundbreaking. Really, you're whipping this out for the damage. Um, in terms of energy, 5, 3, and 5. Skullcracker comes up obviously much more frequently, but Balog doesn't have the best energy, but his overall base stats, keep him alive better than others. So in terms of synergies, I don't personally use Balog too much, but when I do like to pair him with William and use dual tanking. The problem is it's very slow. So if you run dual tanks with William and Balog, throw in a long-term healer like Nub Nub. You could even do someone like Emily if you just want to res them and do like a grief team. Thing is, if you're doing PvP attacks, that PvP defender does not give two shits about you trying to grief them because they just have to exist. Now, if you want to set that as your PvP defense, you might be, messing with someone who's attacking you, but once they get that defense down, it's not going to stop them anyways. So really, you may as well go for something that's a little bit faster. It's nice to be able to survive, but when you're doing PvP, you ultimately want to get through raids and not sit there and not die. So there's one thing to be to avoid losing by not dying. I mean that takes time. You want to win raids. You want to just not die. So two tanks and a healer, you have to have a really good fourth hero then too. So at that point, you could put almost whoever you want in there as long as they can pump out damage. So you'd usually pick your strongest opponent because with two tanks out there, plus Williams, Shields, and Balog Silence, pretty much anyone else you have is going to be successful. You just have to make sure that you can keep the damage off of someone like Nub Nub and whoever your attacker is. So certainly viable if you have a particular team that you would like to workshop with Balog. I would be happy to investigate in it. Like I said, if you run dual tanks with him and William, you could probably use any number of compositions because all you need is really one healer, and most of them in Silver League are going to be reasonable. But you have to consider who you're actually going against. Most of the times when you're going against William teams, you have to be able to handle those double shields, and sometimes these guys just aren't good at doing that, and so your team composition might not be able to go with that easily enough. Anyways, that is a quick look at Balog. Like I said, he's got some really great mechanics, but at the end of the day, he's nothing super special in terms of his stats or his abilities. He's got a couple of really high use cases that just happens to work well with certain compositions. But as far as heroes go, he is just a boring old regular silver hero. If and when epics come out, maybe that'll be different. Maybe he'll have something else that makes him go off on a rampage. But that's all that I got for today. We'll compare him against other tanks much further down the road. I don't have enough basis for comparison at this point. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave those below. Otherwise, we will see you again next time. Thanks for watching. Thank you for watching, and remember, I make YouTube videos for the American working man, because that's what I am, and that's who I care about.